Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ben Drury Show. I'm your host, Ben Drury. On tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about all things March Madness. It is March 17th, and the madness is upon us, with games starting tonight with the first four matchups, bringing 8 teams to Dayton, Ohio, as 16 and 11 seed teams play for a spot in the big dance. On tonight's show, we're going to be breaking down every single game, all 63 games in the bracket, based on how I have picked them in various bracket pools. Now, here's the thing. This year for March Madness, we remember from college football season the by the numbers ranking system, allowing the BTN to by the numbers BTN, allowing me to use that to improve analysis as it gives a better hand on teams' performance and better predicting how they will perform. Now, BTN Insights, I went into the numbers, cracked down some numbers, researched what numbers will do well for teams, allow them to have success in March, and BTN Insights has come up with a bracket helper feature, which has allowed me to look at every single matchup, win probabilities, spreads, all of those different things that are important for picking games. Now, this isn't just a mathematics bracket. I also did provide some insight, and I will be doing that as well tonight. But that is just another tool that has helped me to pick this bracket. So, without further ado, I'm Ben Drury, and this is the Ben Drury Show, so don't go anywhere. Well, tonight as we sit here, I said in the open that games start this evening for the beginning of March Madness. And why waste any more time? We're going to start in the East region. Starting off, number 1 Duke will be facing off against the 16 seed Siena. No one can truly pick a 16-1 upset, so I'm not going to be doing that here. Duke is very, very good. Now, number 8 TCU. I struggled with this one a little bit. And this is truly a toss-up. This is an 8 and 9 game the way it should be, where both teams are very evenly matched. CBS is going to be a great matchup, one of the best, I would say, in this first round of the tournament. And according to my bracket, I picked Ohio State in this one. Now, I've seen a lot of people on social media. I put up a poll asking people what games to talk about, and one of them was this Louisville versus numbers 11 South Florida game on TNT at 1:30 on Thursday, which is actually my birthday. But I haven't been convinced. I haven't been convinced enough to let South Florida take the upset here, and this is what I'm looking like. A lot of people like UCF at this point. However, the BTN Insights model does like Louisville, as they have a better adjusted offense, which basically that's a KenPom statistic saying how good a team is over 200, or I believe 100 possessions, just showing how good they are offensively on an averaged scale, averaged out to better compare from one team to the next, as well as they have a really good defense. So giving them a good net score of 25.5, which if you're looking at each of those scores is number 17 and number 19 respectively in this field of 64. So that is impressive for Louisville. However, what does USF need to do to win this game? Well, it's pretty simple. USF needs to force turnovers. That's a gimme. But the thing is that the blueprint for teams coming up and trying to upset a team in March is getting them out of rhythm, getting them uncomfortable. Because if you're Pat Kelsey and the Louisville Cardinals, you're not too worried about South Florida. Now, no coach is going to come into a game unless you're Mark DeRosa, the manager of the World Baseball Classic USA team. No one's going to come into a matchup and explicitly say, oh, we don't need to pay attention to this team, especially in March, especially in the March tournament. Pat Kelsey is not doing that. And the thing with the upsets and the thing that's going to be important here is that Louisville needs to step into this game and treat it like just like any day, just like any game. They need to be able to play the same way they've played all season, which has given them this 6th seed. And so for USF, what do they need to do to make sure that Louisville can't do that? And what are the keys to success for this USF Bulls team? Well, they are very, very good at forcing turnovers as well as limiting their own. They're 16th and 17th in both of those categories, respectively, as well as this other statistic that was shocking and it's going to be very important for them if they're able to do. If they are able to do this well, the Bulls have a fighting chance. And they're very good on the offensive glass. getting rebounds, getting second chances, second to third chances off the glass, and as their top 10 in offensive rebounding percentage. So that's very, very important. I pick Louisville to win this matchup, but that just depends on your personal preference, and I'm going Louisville here. I haven't seen enough from South Florida to go the other way. Now moving on, Michigan State, the 3 versus number 14, North Dakota State. This is pretty simple. Michigan State, Tom Izzo's team, very, very good. I like what I've seen from them this season, and I haven't seen, just like South Florida, nothing is coming off the page about North Dakota State that will allow me to pick that matchup, as well as Michigan State being the 3 seed and NDSU being the 14. Now, as we move on to the Friday, March 20th games, number 5 versus St. John's, number 5 St. John's versus number 12 Northern Iowa. This is going to be a good one. I think if you are St. John's fans, maybe if you're more specifically Big East fans, this doesn't seem like that hard of a game to win. But it is definitely going to be closer than you think. Andy Katz, I saw something today that the key to picking a good March Madness bracket is picking at least 12 over 5 upset pick. I don't have one in my bracket. And this one did not give me a case. I'm not going to lose much sleep over picking St. John's in this matchup. But some things that maybe would lead me the other way is that Northern Iowa takes the lead over St. John's in these 3 categories. Or 4. No, just 3. They have a better efficient field goal percentage, which is very good, as well as a very, very good opponent efficient field goal percentage. So they're very effective field goal percentage, So they are very, very good, and that's a score that weights 2-pointers against 3-pointers and just gives a percentage for a team in how well they're effectively scoring the ball. And that's a very, very good thing for Northern Iowa to have that advantage. And an even better thing is that they limit teams to not do good shooting effectively from the field with a they take the advantage in that category as well. And another thing, along with forcing turnovers and 3-point shooting percentage that can lead to success in March as a lower seed, is defensive rebounding, as it allows teams to really kind of slow down the tempo, because once you get that defensive rebound, the ball is yours. The ball is yours, and you can take it up the court at however much pace you want to do that. And that will give Northern Iowa a very, very good advantage in this game, as it allows them to control the tempo a little bit more, especially if they're not giving St. John's second to third chance opportunities off the glass, which are points that you cannot give up as a team that, if you're looking at all of the statistics, is a bit weaker. And just to sum that all up, St. John's versus number 12, Northern Iowa. I did pick St. John's here, and nothing against Northern Iowa, but there was not enough there for me to pick Northern Iowa for that upset. Now moving on, at 9:45, wow, that's a late one. Number 4, Kansas will be taking on number 13, Cal Baptist on CBS. And I don't even have any notes for this one. Kansas, Darren Peterson, Bill Self, a great team in March. And this is going to be a common theme. I'm sounding like a broken record already. And Cal Baptist, I just haven't seen enough from them to pick the upset there as well. Now, in UCLA, UCF, this one is going to be close. And one of the most common upsets that people can pick is either a 7-10 game or an 8-9 game. And in this case is that 7-10. And for UCF, for them to win this matchup, they need to do this. They need to limit UCLA from shooting and, taking less shots, slowing down the rhythm, if this game is low scoring, UCF takes the advantage. And they also need to turn them over, UCLA, on a very, very high level, which UCF has been able to do to pretty much almost all of the teams they've played up until this point in the season. I did lean UCLA in my bracket, but UCF, if the game goes that lower scoring defensive battle way, UCF might be taking the upper hand in that matchup. Now, in the final game, in the East region, we've got UConn versus number 15, Furman. And just a quick little anecdote, and you're going to see how this pans out later on in my bracket, is that whenever putting together the power rating score, the BTN Insights power rating score, UConn seems to be critically overseeded, where they sit at a number 2 seed, but truly based on power rating, they're the 11th best team in the country, which is not the best thing for Dan Hurley. And that's just a quick sidebar as we move on into the South region. Now, starting off with the number 2 seed, Houston. And Houston and Kelvin Sampson's team, Kelvin Sampson being one of the best coaches in college basketball, one of the best to not have that much college national championship coaching winning experience. One of the things is that they are very, very, very poised. And whenever you're a poised team, whenever you're very, confident, whenever you're very, you're very, very good at focusing on what you are good at and sticking to those things all season long. Whenever you're one of those things, that is instantly going to make you less upset prone. And in this matchup, I do not see Idaho beating Houston. And this is a late one. Wow, 10-10 on Thursday, but Houston will come out with the win. It's on True TV. You can catch it there. Now, this next one, the 7-10 matchup, St. Mary's versus number 10, Texas A&M. This is one of the first true upsets. Not an 8-9 game. I don't really like to call that an upset. It is based on seeding, but it's not as much because those teams should be very, very well versed and in comparison to each other. But in this game, it doesn't feel like a 7-10 game. These two teams, St. Mary's and Texas A&M, this feels like it could be an 8-9 game, and that's not that big of a jump. But in this circumstance, it really is. For Texas A&M, they are better at limiting turnovers and really forcing them as well, which is going to be, and I've said it a few times, is very, very important in March. And they also have a better effective field goal percentage. They take better shots. They have a better balance between 3-point and 2-pointer shots. And it can be easy to see Gonzaga's loss against St. Mary's and give that as an instant point to Texas A&M. But Texas A&M, I would say, plays in a far, not even just me, everyone will say that they play in a better conference in the SEC as opposed to the Western Coast. And Texas A&M has gone through a gauntlet of a schedule. They came out, they played well in the SEC tournament. They didn't make it that far, but they competed. And Bucky McMillan's team, in his first year as the head coach, they're going to be looking good, setting up for potentially a first-round win. I did take Texas A&M to pull the upset in the 10-7 game. Now, number 3, Illinois versus 14 Penn. One of the stories I saw on my timeline last week was TJ Powers, former, I want to say he was on Duke for a year, absolutely going off against Yale. He made a critical tying three-pointer to go into overtime in the Ivy League championship game. And this team, Penn, coached by Fran McCaffrey, who one of the best coaches of all time. I think he's one of only 5 coaches all time who have coached 5+ teams into a March Madness appearance. But the fairy tale, it's not going much farther than this. Illinois, you'll see later on in this video, in this show, I like Illinois a lot. Even though I am a Missouri Tigers fan, and I am not supposed to not like the Illinois Illini, I sat in that Enterprise Center Arena and Enterprise Center. And I sat there and saw Illinois manhandle Missouri, beating them by 40+ points. And I had a video after that game, or I at least tweeted it on Twitter about how frustrating that was. And Missouri is sitting here as a 10 seed in this tournament. And that just goes to show how good Illinois is. And they're going to be making a run in this game. TJ Powers had great success against Yale. It's not going to be the case on Thursday. Moving on. Now, number 6, North Carolina versus number 11, VCU. This is my first real upset pick of the bracket. VCU will come away with this win. And, let it air out. Let it take a second. Let it sink in. Yes, VCU, I picked them to win in this game, and here's why. This feels like a very Drake-Mizzou from last year matchup, where Bennett Sturts for the Drake Bulldogs, coached by McCollum, I believe his last name is. Very, very good team, Drake was. And they were sitting there at the 11th seed versus Mizzou. People were talking about this game just like it would be a Elite 8, maybe not an Elite 8 game, but a very, it's going to be very, very competitive, and Drake's going to come out with the win. VCU kind of gives me that same vibe in this game. Some things I'm looking at is that, one, for UNC, they haven't played great as of late. Coming off of that Duke win earlier in the season, they didn't play very good. They got beat on the road at Duke by a lot. Duke, one of the best teams in the country. You'll see later on. And they just haven't played great as of late after losing Caleb Wilson. Seth Trimble is a great player, but Caleb Wilson, that's a hole you cannot fill. And I think VCU has the tools to exploit that. And here's why. They are better at forcing turnovers, which we've said it a few times already, is fuel for an upset. And they are great on the offensive glass, giving themselves multiple looks after a first initial shot. And that's going to be very, very important for VCU to truly dictate this game, which is pretty consistent with any March Madness upset you'll watch. So I went VCU over UNC in the 6-11 matchup. Now moving on, Vanderbilt versus McNeese. Vanderbilt wins this game. Will Wade and the McNeese Cowboys, they will not pull another 5-12 upset like they did last year against Clemson. And Vanderbilt will come away with this win. I have them going far into this year's March Madness. I like what I'm seeing from the Commodores. Now, number 4, Nebraska versus number 13, Troy, as I get a drink. This one's going to be good. I saw on ESPN this morning that this is the most picked 13 versus 4 upset pick, and I don't see it. I think Nebraska will come out with their first ever tournament win. I think that probably plays into it a little bit. Nebraska hasn't been able to play well in March, but also Nebraska hasn't had the same level of success they've had this year in a long time. So bonus to Nebraska in this game. Now, moving on into our second to last game of the South region. In the Iowa-Clemson game, this is probably the most the seeding here should be flip-flopped. Iowa should be the 8 seed. Clemson should be the 9 seed, if not a little bit lower. And just Iowa is better offensively and plays great defense. So they have the clear advantage here. And as well as when we're looking at the BTN Insights power ratings, they're top 25 in the country in that metric, which weights 8 key metrics that we've talked about here tonight already. And so Iowa has the upper hand here. It's their game to lose, and I picked them to win in that matchup as well. And then finally, in the number 1, Florida versus the 16 play-in game, which we'll see here tonight, Prairie View A&M versus Lehigh on TNT. Florida will come away with this win, no scratches, and they'll move on to play in the next round. Now moving on to the West region. This West region is going to go by quick. I think this one will probably pretty much chalk up exactly how the seeding plays out as opposed to a few specific games. Now I'm just going to run through real quick. We've got Wisconsin. I have them beating High Point. Then I got Arkansas beating Hawaii, and then we got BYU beating the play-in winner, whether that be Texas or NC State. I see BYU having that advantage, led by AJ DeBonsa. They've had a great season. They kind of slowed down into the end of the season, but they're playing good basketball right now, and I don't see 11 Texas or NC State giving that much of a run for their money. Now, number 3, Gonzaga versus number 14, Kennesaw State. Common reoccurrence. Gonzaga will come out with the win in this matchup. Then we got the number 1 on Friday. We've got number 1 Arizona versus number 16 LIU. And you'll see later on in the video, I really like Arizona and I like them to win this game. They should. Right now, it is their region to lose if we're looking at the teams in this region, and they will come out with this win. Now, number 8 Villanova versus number 9 Utah State. Utah State, Aggies deserve to be seated higher. They're better in 5 of the 8 categories as opposed to Villanova, and they're number 7 in the country in not only effective field goal percentage and opponent turnover percentage, which is very, very, very good. They turn over opponents at a very high rate, and they take really, really good field goals and make them on a very, very successful amount of times per attempt. And so I picked Utah State to win that game. Now, as you can see my sweatshirt, I may be a little bit biased. Here, but as we see the number 7 versus number 10 Missouri matchup, Miami cannot guard Mark Mitchell. This is not the Ben Drury Mizzou show, so I don't want to be talking too much about Mizzou here, but I genuinely think from a non-biased perspective, following in the ways of Jay Billis, who is a great college basketball analyst and announcer, Miami cannot handle Mark Mitchell down low. And really, this Missouri team is going to be lethal down the stretch. And if they can win this game, which is a heavy if you watch any Mizzou sports ever, if you're a Missouri fan, it's one of the hardest things to do. They are very inconsistent, and right now they're in a very big slump. But I see them getting over the hump here and coming out in their home state of Missouri in St. Louis, coming out at, at 10:10 p.m. I believe it is 10:10 Eastern. And they're going to come out on True TV in front of some of their home fans, and they're going to come out and win in this matchup. And then finally, we've got number 2 Purdue versus number 15 Queens. I don't see Queens putting up a fight, really. And Purdue, yes, they lost to Fairleigh Dickinson. Yes, they haven't had the most success in March. But Matt Painter, this is his team's year. They're going to make a run, and Braden Smith is going to cap his career with a good March performance. And that starts with a win over number 15 Queens. Now moving on into the Midwest region. This is our final region, our final round of 64 games. And starting on Thursday, number 1 Michigan will take on the winner of UMBC or Howard. And if you remember, UMBC was the first team to beat a number 1 seed as a 16 seed in college basketball. That will not be happening. That will not be happening this year. Michigan is far too good. Dusty May's team, Yaxel Lindenborg, whoever it is on that roster. Yes, they've had some hiccups. Yes, they lost in the Big Ten tournament to Purdue, who we just talked a little bit about earlier. And Michigan, they're looking good up until this point, and I see them coming away unscathed in this win. Now, in the 8-9 game, the winner of this will play Michigan, St. Louis, and Georgia. I've got St. Louis coming away with the win, and here's why. Josh Schertz's team from the American 10 Conference, St. Louis shoots the ball incredibly well, and they do not let opponents do the same. They're the number 1 team in the country in effective field goal percentage, and they're the number 2 team in the country in opponents' effective field goal percentage. And I just do not see Georgia keeping up with that. I think that St. Louis will take over in this game. They'll shoot the 3 ball, which they do very well. Robbie Avila, or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, as I like to call him, will take over in this game and will bring Josh Schertz's and the Billikens a March Madness win out of the American 10 Conference. Now, this is another game. Texas Tech versus Akron. I think this is the most popular 12 versus 5 upset picked game. And this is another one. I don't see it. But I did have to play a little bit of devil's advocate, trying to advocate a little bit for Akron and trying to disprove the pick a little bit. And here's what I came up with. Akron could pull it off. They have number 3. They're the number 3 team in effective field goal percentage. And without JT Toppin, the Raiders haven't played that well. They haven't played that well. Christian Anderson goes out in the Big 12 tournament after they en route to losing by 20 points to Iowa State. I'm not sure his status going into this matchup, but I do not see Texas Tech losing this game. Grant McCaslin has coached a great team, one of the best coaches in college basketball, I would say, and Texas Tech will come away with this win in this matchup. Now, number 4, Alabama versus number 13, Hofstra. A lot of people have been talking about Aiden Holloway, his importance to this Alabama team, and I don't see it playing that much of a factor. LeBaron Philon is one of the best players in all of college basketball, up there with, the likes of AJ DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer. He's a very good scorer, great leader, really, really good point guard for this Alabama Crimson Tide. And Nate Oates' team, I don't like him whatsoever. But they're going to come away in this matchup with a win. Losing Aiden Holloway is not going to be that much of a loss. And then we're just going to rifle through these remaining games. We've got Tennessee winning it over the number 11, either Miami of Ohio. Some people were surprised to see them in the play-in, or SMU. And then we're going to have number 13 over Wright State, Kentucky over Santa Clara. I don't know why I said that. Then we've got Iowa State winning over Tennessee State. And with that being said, that's all we have for the opening round of this college football. I was about to say college football playoff. That is not right whatsoever. Now, I do want to take a quick little segue, and I want to talk about BTN Insights for a second. And if you don't remember from college football season, BTN is the by the numbers ranking system. It started as just a simple college football ranking system. It's not simple. but it started off as just a college football ranking system. Now, this year for college basketball, we've branched in just at the right time for college basketball. For March Madness, we've come in and we have made the BTN Insights by the numbers college basketball power rating system. And this is, and I want to explain this real quick, is that the by the numbers ranking system is a ranking system where typically whenever something is a computer generated output for in ranking teams and putting them in order based on that number, people call that rating. But that's not what the by the numbers ranking system is for football, because it takes into account strength of schedule and the actual teams you're playing, not just the data point or how many points you score, which a lot of systems do. Now, the BTN Insights college basketball score, or just the BTN college basketball score for short, is different. It uses 8 key statistics. It's adjusted offense, a KenPom statistic, adjusted defense, which is also a KenPom statistic. And then we've got effective field goal percentage, opponent's effective field goal percentage, offensive rebounding percentage, defensive rebounding percentage, then we've got turnover percentage as well as opponent's turnover percentage, which are a bunch of things that truly show performance during the college basketball season, showing how good teams are. And we're going to be using that going forward to rank teams in years to come. Now, with that being said, that's BTN Insights. So whenever we're talking about power ratings in this video, that's what that means. And just wanted to clear that up before we move on into the round of 32 games. Now, this isn't going to be perfect, right? Because this is just how the bracket shook out. And so we've got number 1 Duke versus number 8 Ohio State. Give me Duke. Duke is looking very, very good. They're a very, very good team. And I just don't think Ohio State has what it takes to come and beat Duke. Now, here's the thing. If I did have to say 1 point in favor of Ohio State, they're very experienced. They're a very good coach team. And the thing with Duke, it's more specifically tying on Duke, is that Duke is missing Caleb Foster, they're the point guard for Duke. He's played great all season, and Caden Boozer is coming into this new role. So it could very easily go the other way, where Ohio State is just playing great defense all game long, and then it just gets Caden Boozer and the Duke Blue Devils outside of their comfort zone, and then they shoot the lights out. And then that could come out with an upset pick. But I just do not think that's going to happen, and I think Duke comes away with the win. Now, in the number 5 versus number 4 matchup, St. John's versus Kansas, and I'm going to be picking Kansas in this matchup. Flory Badunga, Darren Peterson, we'll see how much he plays, but truly I think this looks more on Bill Self. Bill Self has coached teams in March that are better than some of the best teams. He's won a lot of national championships, but his teams are year in and year out well coached, and they perform well in March no matter what year it is. Now, on the other side of the court, Rick Pitino's St. John's team, they had a very good season last year, and part of this could be me being salty because last year I had them in my Final Four and they did not make it anywhere close, but I just do not think they're going to be on the same level. It's going to be a close game, don't get me wrong, and I'm actually very excited to see that matchup, but I think Kansas will come away with the win in this one. Now, number 6 Louisville versus number 3 Michigan State. Now, this could obviously look a different way. We already talked about Louisville versus South Florida in that game. If South Florida wins, you will almost 100% give Michigan State the upper hand in this matchup. But even in Michigan State versus Louisville, I'm giving Michigan State the upper hand no matter what. I think Michigan State is a little bit undercredited based on what people are saying about them. Are people saying anything bad about them? No, but I think they could deserve a little bit more credit as a true title contender, and I think this will be one of those games. And in the final game of the region, we've got UCLA versus UConn. In talking to a lot of my friends, I've seen some people who have actually picked UCLA in this matchup. It might be partially me not really liking what's their coach, and I can't remember his name anyway, we've all seen his clips, his antics, whatever you want to call them, and no one likes him. And I think that after the first round, UCLA, after playing UCF, they're going to come into this game and they will lose to UConn. And Dan Hurley's team will move on to the second weekend in the tournament. Now in the South region, we've got number 1 Florida versus number 9 Iowa. Give me Florida. And then in number 5 Vanderbilt versus number 4 Nebraska. I'm going to take Vanderbilt here. Here's why. Nebraska, and I heard Mark Titus talking about this on Barstool. He used a little bit different and weirder words and in a kind of a weird way to describe it. But Nebraska will be focused on winning just one tournament game, where their Super Bowl is the first round because all they have to do is win a game, and it's the first time they've ever done that in history. Does that mean that they won't come to play here? Not necessarily, but it also does give a reason if Nebraska doesn't look the best coming out after that first round win, they weren't ready because they were celebrating too hard. And I also think, even if you don't want to talk about Nebraska in this sentence whatsoever, Vanderbilt is just the better team. They're one of the best teams in the country. I think a 5 seed may even be a little low after they made that SEC tournament final, and they will come away with the win. And this next one's simple. Number 11 VCU versus number 3 Illinois. Give me Illinois. I love Illinois here. And then number 10 Texas A&M versus number 2 Houston. I will take Houston to win that matchup. Now in the second half of the round of 32, we've got number 1 Arizona versus number 9 Utah State. Give me Arizona. And then in number 5 Wisconsin versus number 4 Arkansas. Give me Darius Acuff and the Arkansas Razorbacks, coached by John Calipari. This is another great team. Darius Acuff really took over in the SEC championship game, as well as Trevon Brazile, which really hurts my heart to say, as he was a Missouri Tigers player just a few years ago. And then we've got number 6 BYU versus number 3 Gonzaga. Give me Gonzaga. AJ DeBonsa is good, but not good enough to dethrone a Gonzaga team coached by Mark Few, who, just like Kelvin Sampson's Houston Cougars, is year in and year out one of the best coached teams in college basketball. And then number 2, Purdue versus number 10 Missouri. No matter how much I love Mizzou, I'm focusing on winning bracket pools here, and so it's just a business decision. I love the boys in black and gold and Truman Tiger, but we're going Purdue here to win that game. And then finally, in the Midwest region, number 1 Michigan versus number 9 St. Louis. I am taking number 1 Michigan to move on. And then number 5 Texas Tech versus number 4 Alabama. I picked Alabama to win this game. Texas Tech without JT Toppin and maybe without Christian Anderson will not be enough to stop Bull Bowen and the other players on that Alabama Crimson Tide roster. And Alabama will move on to the Sweet 16. Then we got number 6 Tennessee versus number 3 Virginia, and we are taking Virginia here to win that matchup. And then we've got number 7 Kentucky versus number 2 Iowa State, and Taman Lipsey and that Iowa State Cyclones team, they will move on to the Sweet 16. Now we're now in the Sweet 16, and starting off in the East, we've got a matchup between a 1 and a 4, a blue blood matchup, Duke versus number 4 Kansas. And this will be hard fought. It could go the way of Kansas coming out with the win, and what would that look like? It looks like just like if Ohio State would beat Duke the previous round, it would look like Caden Boozer getting uncomfortable. John Shire's team would not come out to play poorly defensively. Flory Badunga just gets any shot he wants. Darren Peterson plays the whole game and shoots lights out all game long. Melvin Council Jr. plays great defense, grabbing offensive and defensive boards. That's what it would look like for Kansas to come out with the win here. But Duke is the number 1 overall seed for a reason, and they will come out of this game with a win, moving on to the Elite 8. In number 3 Michigan State versus number 2 UConn, we said it earlier, and I put a footnote when I said it earlier on this, is that UConn is one of the most overrated seeds up until this point, where they should not be a 2 seed. I would put them at a 3 seed, and Michigan State will win for that reason. Michigan State has the advantage in multiple categories over them based on the power rating score by BT and Insights. And Tom Izzo's team will win to set up a matchup in the next round, setting up for the rematch of the Elite 8 between Michigan State a few years ago and Duke, led by Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, and those great players. One of the best all-time March Madness games, went back and forth up until the last buzzer, and we'll see a rematch here later in a few weeks. Then we've got in the South, we've got number 1 Florida versus number 5 Vanderbilt, and this one seems to be an easy pick, but you're wrong. I'm taking Vanderbilt to win this game. They beat Florida in the SEC tournament, and they will do it again. And Vanderbilt will continue their very successful march into the Elite Eight. I think that might be one of the first times in program history where they reach that point in the March Madness tournament. And then number 3, Illinois versus number 2, Houston. These games will be played in Houston, but the Illini faithful will travel well for these games. And Houston has nothing to guard Illinois. Kingston Flemings for the Houston Cougars. I haven't said his name enough here tonight. That's the first time I've said his name. He's a great player, but I would say probably a better freshman is Keaton Wagler, the point guard for Illinois. Sitting in Enterprise Center watching him play against my Missouri Tigers was amazing. He's a great player, really good shooter. There's a reason why he went into Purdue and beat them, putting up 43 points. I think, 43 or 46 points. Keaton Wagler is legit, and he will do the same against Houston. In the West, we got number 1, Arizona versus number 4, Arkansas, and give me Arizona to continue on into the Elite Eight, getting over the hump for Tommy Lloyd's team. And then number 3, Gonzaga versus number 2, Purdue. Purdue hasn't had success the past few years in March, but they will this year, getting to the Elite Eight, getting to a point they haven't been able to. And here is Purdue. They will make the Elite Eight this year after beating Gonzaga. Then in the final region, we've got number 1, Michigan versus number 4, Alabama, and number 3, Virginia versus number 2, Iowa State. And in the first game, give me Michigan to win. Alabama, missing Aiden Holloway, will come out in this matchup, especially considering the depth. Elliot Godot, one of the best defenders in college basketball coming from North Carolina, will shut the LeBaron Philon down. This will be a very competitive matchup, but I think Yaxel Lindenberg will really just take over in this game. And Dusty May's team, and Dusty May will lead another team to the Elite Eight, hopefully looking for a Final Four, a national championship game appearance. We'll see. And then in the final game, number 3, Virginia versus number 2, Iowa State. I picked Iowa State to win this game. That team, Taman Lipsey, and that roster, they are very, very good, winning against beating Texas Tech in the Big 12 tournament by 20 points. Yes, it was after Texas Tech lost Christian Anderson, but beating any Big 12 foe by 20 in a championship tournament environment is very, very big, and Iowa State will win this game against Virginia. And if you didn't know this, I'm blanking on his name. I believe it's Coach Odom for Virginia. He was the head coach of UMBC when they beat Virginia back multiple years ago now. I'm blanking on what year it is. But that March Madness luck will wear off, and they will not make it past, and they will lose in the Sweet 16. Iowa State advances to the Elite Eight. Now we're in the Elite Eight. I've got number 1, Duke versus number 3, Michigan State. And this is pretty simple for me. This is a rematch. We've seen it multiple times, Duke versus Michigan State. And I'm taking Duke to win this game. Duke will rise to the Final Four for a second straight year. Jon Scheyer is probably one of the most underrated coaches in college basketball. It takes a lot to take a program from Coach K and bring it to arguably, is it better? Maybe not, but a very, very good team, and he's brought them to this point here this year, playing great basketball, and they're sitting here. They will win against Michigan State in the East. And then we've got number 5, Vanderbilt versus number 3, Illinois. This is the only Elite Eight matchup with no number 1 seed, and Illinois will win this game. Vanderbilt has put up a great fight, but Illinois will take over with 3-point shooting coming from Jake Davis. Great point guard play coming from Keaton Wagler, as we've talked about him a few times here tonight. And Illinois will win this game, coming out with a key victory in an appearance in the Final Four after a great season led by Brad Underwood. Then in the West, we've got number 1, Arizona versus number 2, Purdue. And then Arizona will come out with this win led by Tommy Lloyd. Koa Pete has had a great season this year, and Arizona will come out with a win that on the day in the Elite Eight. Then we've got, in the Midwest, the final matchup, we've got number 1, Michigan versus number 2, Iowa State. So I'm so sorry for that. Michigan will come out with the win here. Yaxel Lindenberg has been one of the best college basketball players this season. He will take over this game. Dusty May will lead another team to the Final Four. Michigan will come out with another Final Four appearance, adding to an elusive stack of titles and banners in the Chrysler Center. Now in the Final Four, we've got number 1 Duke versus number 3 Illinois, and then number 1 Arizona versus number 1 Michigan. And this is pretty simple. In the first game, Illinois has had a great March Madness run up until this point if everything goes to plan for my bracket, but it will end. Duke will come out victorious in this game. And Brad Underwood is a great recruiter. He recruits experienced, great coachable players, and that's not going to be enough in this matchup. Duke, I think, just matches up better against the Illini, and they will come away with this win, going into doing what they couldn't do last year and making it to the national championship game, and Jon Scheyer's first time coaching in the national championship. And then the Final Four semifinal is number 1 Arizona versus number 1 Michigan. And this one is going to be, if this ends up being a matchup, I'm going to be very, very excited for that. And to say quickly, Arizona will come away with this win. They're very, very good, fundamentally sound on defense, and that's the key to success, to shutting down a very explosive offense for Michigan. Arizona won't get too high and won't get too low, which is going to be very important for their success in March and will be important for their success in this game. And I pick Arizona to win that and move on to the national championship. Speaking of the national championship, here we go. The 2026 national championship game, hosted in Indianapolis with one of the best courts I've seen for the national championship in a long time. Great court design. We've got Duke facing off against Arizona. And this game I'm very excited for. We'll most likely have another video about this game heading into it, so I'm not going to get too advanced into the insight up until this point. But Arizona, I've talked about them in the build-up in the last few rounds, but Arizona is very, very fundamentally sound. Tommy Lloyd is a great, great coach, and he's going to bring his team to play. He's going to keep them poised. No moment is too big for the Arizona Wildcats, and they're going to come into Lucas Oil Stadium, and they're going to play well, and they are going to put up a fight against Duke. And Duke will do the same for Arizona. Caden Boozer, Cameron Boozer, that starting 5. Caden Boozer coming into a new role. Up until this point, he will have the best stretch of his career, playing in significant more roles, playing more minutes, having to take on more responsibility for his team. But unfortunately for the Jon Scheyer Duke Blue Devils, Arizona will win this game, and the Arizona Wildcats will be victorious, holding up the trophy, hanging banners in their arena in Arizona, and Arizona will be the 2026 national champion team, running the gauntlet in March Madness and submitting themselves into the history books of fame in college basketball. Now, that is all we have for today's episode of the Ben Drury Show. That was a long one, talking about 63 games of college basketball, looking into the future for them. None of these games have been played yet, so my bracket could be busted on day one. I really hope it's not, because I really need to beat my friends in for the bragging rights that comes with March Madness bracket pools. So without further ado, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Ben Drury Show. Make sure to like and subscribe. Maybe drop a comment down below. What games are you excited to seeing in March this year? And thank you so much for watching. I'm Ben Drury, and this is the Ben Drury Show. Good night.